This video is brought to you by Brilliant. Over the past few months, it's become overwhelmingly clear that Putin is the main obstacle to peace in Ukraine. While Trump has been able to push Ukraine into accepting a hypothetical ceasefire, he's been unable to do the same with Putin, despite numerous concessions. And on Tuesday, Bloomberg reported that Putin is now demanding the 4 oblasts that Russia claimed in 2022, even though Russia doesn't actually control much of this territory. This has given way to a sort of negotiating standstill. Trump is basically out of proverbial carrots, but Putin is still saying no. So in this video, we thought we'd try our best to figure out how to actually get Putin to the negotiating table and ultimately negotiate peace with Ukraine. Who is the most influential person in the world? Well, with your help, we've put together a full ranking. Learn the top 10 in the video linked below, or pick up a copy of our magazine for the full list. So let's start by motivating the premise, and explaining why it looks like Putin is now the main object to any sort of peace in Ukraine. While Zelensky originally resisted Trump's calls for a temporary ceasefire in March, he was forced into a swift U-turn after the US temporarily withdrew military support and intelligence sharing. Unfortunately for Trump, Putin quickly scuppered any deal, first by insisting that the ceasefire be limited to energy infrastructure and the Black Sea, and then by retrospectively adding a whole load of impossible conditions. Negotiations promptly collapsed, and in April, Trump gave up on the idea of some sort of temporary ceasefire, and instead went straight for a more comprehensive, permanent deal. To this end, Trump offered the Kremlin a ton of proverbial carrots, including de facto recognition of Russia's control over Ukrainian territory in the east, de jure recognition of Crimea, the withdrawal of sanctions, economic normalization between Russia and the US, Ukraine's exclusion from NATO, and a guarantee that the US wouldn't be involved in any post-war security guarantee. This apparently wasn't enough for Putin, who continued to assault Ukraine, demanded that Ukraine be demilitarized, ruled out European involvement in any post-war peacekeeping force, and suggested that Zelensky would need to be replaced before serious negotiations. On top of all this, on Tuesday, Bloomberg reported that Putin was demanding full control over the 4 oblasts that Russia claimed via sham referenda in September 2022, despite the fact that Russia doesn't actually control all this territory, and that Putin previously suggested he would accept a freeze along the current front lines. This all suggests Putin essentially believes Russia has the upper hand on the battlefield, and that this looks unlikely to change anytime soon, given Trump seems set on winding down support for Ukraine, and Europe lacks the political unity or industrial capacity to escalate, at least in the short term. Refusing negotiations has also served Putin pretty well so far. Every time he said no, the US just comes back with another carrot. Nonetheless, at this point, Trump is running out of carrots, which raises the question, what, if anything, can actually be done to force Putin to a deal? Well, as we see it, there are 3 big sticks available. The first and most obvious is to escalate military aid to Ukraine. This is something that Trump actually threatened in a Fox News interview in 2023, when he said that he'd tell Putin, if you don't make a deal, we're going to give them a lot more than they ever got. Nonetheless, at the moment, Trump doesn't seem keen on this idea, and has insisted on numerous occasions that supporting Ukraine is bad value for the American taxpayer. One way around this would be for Ukraine to actually buy the weapons off the US, which would both guarantee value for money and help with Trump's stated project of reindustrializing America. Now, obviously, Ukraine doesn't really have any money at the moment, but these purchases could either be financed with support from Ukraine's European allies or via some sort of loan from the US. Perhaps akin to the foreign military financing direct loans that the US recently agreed with Poland to finance the purchase of billions of dollars worth of Abrams tanks, Apache helicopters, and Patriot air defense batteries, all as part of Poland's massive military buildup. Nonetheless, this might be a difficult sell for Trump politically, given his base isn't too keen on Ukraine, and this would very much imply that his peace negotiations had essentially failed. On top of this, it would risk an escalatory response from Russia. The second option would be to bring down global oil prices. As we've mentioned in previous videos, sanctions on Russia have been less effective than the West originally hoped, in large part because Russia has still been able to find buyers for its hydrocarbons. While Russia has had to sell its oil at a discount, this discount has shrunk over time, and global prices have been high enough for Russia to turn a healthy profit. This all suggests that the only way to put real pressure on the Kremlin's finances is to bring down global oil prices. Now, Trump has already sort of done this by damaging the global economy, which has reduced demand and brought prices down from about $80 a barrel to nearer $65. But he could push prices down even further by releasing oil from America's Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This might sound like an improper use of the reserve, but Biden did it in 2022 and 2023, and it worked surprisingly well. In short, Biden released oil from the reserve to stabilize the market and bring down prices after Putin's invasion, and then started refilling the reserve when prices fell a bit in late 2024. Not only did this successfully stabilize global prices, the US also turned a tidy profit. While Trump might not be able to turn a profit, this shows he could put more downward pressure on prices, which would also bring down inflation in the US. Alternatively, Trump could lean on the Saudis to produce more, or rush through a deal with Iran, which, assuming it involves sanctions relief, would allow Iran to sell more oil on the global market. The third and final option is China. China has emerged as a sort of economic and diplomatic lifeline for Russia, buying up its oil and selling lots of stuff that Russia wouldn't otherwise be able to get its hands on. Russia and China have also become sort of anti-American allies, with China often backing Russia at the UN and parroting Russian talking points in official statements. Nonetheless, China is also clearly uneasy about Russia's war in Ukraine. Obviously, the war is bad for global prosperity and stability, but China is also very much opposed to any redrawing of international borders, in part because it sees this as a threat to the so-called One China principle, i.e. the idea that there is only one China, including both Taiwan and the mainland, which is why China has consistently expressed support for Ukraine's territorial integrity. While it's hard to see Trump persuading China to put pressure on the Kremlin, given the dire state of US-China relations, the EU might have more luck. China is clearly trying to peel Europe away from the US, both for political reasons and because China sees the EU market as a potential replacement for the US post-tariffs. The EU might be able to leverage this to force Beijing to push Russia into ending the war, although a closer EU-China relationship would push the EU away from the US. At TLDR News, we're always trying to help you learn more about the world around you. Luckily for us, our sponsor this week, Brilliant, shares this same commitment. Their thousands of interactive lessons in maths, science, programming, data analysis, and AI are designed to help you learn by actually doing, rather than asking you to mindlessly memorize stuff. For instance, each lesson is filled with hands-on problem solving that lets you play with concepts, a method proven to be 6 times more effective than watching lecture videos. This helps you build your critical thinking skills and ultimately become a better thinker. Brilliant's newly updated maths courses help you establish a strong foundation in algebra, then helps you build on this, teaching you how to conquer calculus, all while maintaining an emphasis on problem solving and reasoning. The thing I like best about this, though, is that their mathematical courses help you develop your mathematical intuition and fluency, skills that you can use in the real world. As we've told you before, data skills are absolutely necessary for navigating the modern world, and Brilliant is the best way to get them. To try Brilliant for free, visit brilliant.org/TLDR or scan the QR code on screen, or you can click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription.